Hello and welcome to MindShifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Monday, February 17th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also go to your App Store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, please do so. If you're listening live at live.needle.com/MindShifters Radio, we're very glad you're here, and we're glad you're able to listen. However, that will not allow you to type in a comment or put up a hand to actually talk to us directly through the phone. So to do that, you'd need to go to your App Store and download the Needle app. N-E-D-L, Needle, AI for live radio. And once you download that app and load it up and sign in, it will give you the option to type in a comment, let us know how our sound quality is, type in a question about the Reality Management Worksheet and or some of the other tools that Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce offer. You can type in a question, or you can tap on the phone icon and actually call in live. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody does that, because it makes it easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have is to be a service, and we're grateful for anybody who lets us in on what they appreciate, what's working well for them, what doesn't land so well for them, questions, comments, reactions. And you can also do that through email. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, and or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And when we get a question or comment from you, we will address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. So we're here on a Monday. We have plenty of time for comments and questions. And I'm turning on the microphone for Susan Bingham. Are you there, Susan?
I am. Yep. And I wondered
Hello,
if I
Susan.
could read something because it blew my mind, because this is something I found in one of my journals back in 2017.
Well, I am trying to have a conversation with Susan Bingham. Are you speaking, Susan?
Yes.
I
Can you hear
wonder
me?
if other people...
Yeah. Hello, hello.
Okay. So now, did my sound quality just change significantly?
I'm not sure. You're very,
Don't worry about it. How was the sound quality?
you sound a little far away, but okay.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome. How can I support you? What's on your mind today?
Thanks. Well, I found something in a journal that I'd written back in 2017, and I also discovered that that was the year, in August, early August, I found the radio show. And I don't know who told me about it, but that's when I started tuning in. And as soon as I did the first time, I was sold, and I've been on it, as you know, ever since. But I found something, Thich Nhat Hanh is quoted here, and it's about Buddhism, but it also blows my mind because it has so much to do with what you've been teaching, and I have a ton of questions at the end of it. So this is sort of a big thing, and if you have an itinerary that you want to stick to, I'll chime in sometime when things go dry or something. Do you have a plan?
Well, no, please. What is it that you're questioning?
Okay, I'll just read what I had written. After his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha sat for some days in his inner liberation, which he called a state of nirvana. As Thich Nhat Hanh explains, quote, nirvana means extinction. First of all, the extinction of all concepts and notions. Our concepts about things prevent us from really touching them, end quote. For the Buddha, the ability to see reality as it really is, that's Dr. Michael Ryce's actuality, free of all concepts that distort it, was also the extinction of suffering. James Finley says, quote, suffering was blown out from within so that it no longer had any footing in his mind or heart, end quote. So I'm going to keep reading unless you want to say something about that so far.
So do you have a question about what you've read so far?
No.
Okay.
The questions come after I've read a whole pile of stuff here.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's how Finley describes the four noble truths that Buddha taught for the rest of his life. The Buddha felt called to share his discovery to help others come to this realization, his nirvana. He found the ascetics that he had lived with and told them, quote, I come to teach the middle way, end quote. He embodies the middle way in the Four Noble Truths. The first truth is the truth of suffering. By suffering, the Buddha means a pervasive discontent, that the ability to abide in inner peace and fulfillment is elusive. There is a pervasive sense of precariousness. This suffering is the presenting problem. The illness that the Buddha seeks to cure is the propensity for suffering. You can see why this is dovetailing with so much of what we've read. Okay, keeping going. The second noble truth is that there is a way of life that perpetuates that suffering. There are certain habits of mind and heart that are perpetuating the very suffering that we seek to be free from. This way of life has its basis in wanting life to be other than the way it is. This is the diagnosis. The third noble truth is that it is possible to be healed from these symptoms by learning to live as one with the way life is. This is the truth of nirvana, this way of abiding peace and equanimity in the rise and fall of daily circumstances just as they are. So this is the hope for the cure, that it is possible to rest in this abiding inner peace and fulfillment. The fourth noble truth is the noble eightfold path. So it sounds as if the noble truth is just the title, overtitle for the eightfold path that comes after that. In any case, the fourth noble truth is the noble eightfold path, which is the way of life in which one is liberated from the tyranny of suffering, so that one might come to this nirvanic peace, this inner peace, the peace that passes understanding in the midst of life as it is. What good would it do if the Buddha just pointed out the problem and did not give us a way to be delivered from the problem? That way is the noble eightfold path. Okay, here come the questions. Thich Nhat Hanh says, quote, the Chinese translate it as the path of 8 right practices. Translate it mean for the eightfold path. They call it the path of 8 right practices. And I couldn't really relate to these practices. I could a little bit, but that's where I would love to have a discussion. The practices are right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right diligence, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So there you have it. So I have this thing in front of me that I had written, and I don't understand, for instance, the first one, right view. I just need translations, I guess.
Yes, and or to read or listen to books by people like Pema Chödrön and some of the others. There's a husband and wife team that her name will come to me. She does a lot of stuff online as well. He does his own. But these are, it's just like the Michael Singer stuff. It's very, very close to the yogic practice. It's not the same. But if you want to understand these 8, ways to be on the path, then you'll need the Buddhist teachings. And I think on Friday, I was reading from a Pema Chödrön book because she had such a similar take on understanding the ego rather than attacking it. That we have in the Way of Mastery, and that was happening in the Thich Nhat Hanh book, and the same thing that we were running across when I was reading from the Alan Cohen book titled Of Course in Miracles. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of deep, rich how-to in the Buddhist teachings. Mm-hmm. The idea of the Four Noble Truths basically just lay out the problem.
Yeah.
And then the Eightfold Path is how to work with the problem, how to find solutions to the problem. Mm-hmm. So they're not contradictory. They're just, here's 4 things to say to help define the problem.
Yeah.
We're here, we're having a physical experience where there's more to us than just the body. Suffering and having things happen that we prefer wouldn't happen is a part of being in the physical realm. Right? So that's part of the Four Noble Truths and the first truth that that all of life is suffering. And then the understanding of, okay, so how is suffering created in this pattern? And what can we do to either mitigate the suffering or not initiate the mental processes that result in our suffering in the first place?
Right.
So, one of these is the choice of the focus of your conscious awareness in each new present moment. I was just having a session with somebody who is really, really stuck in thoughts of anger and hatred because of what her ex-husband is doing in their ongoing relationship and in relating to their daughter.
Mm.
And this is a very bright person, and she understands when she holds hatred towards somebody, it's like drinking a poison, hoping somebody else will get sick. She understands it at an intellectual level.
Yeah.
And yet, when these interactions happen and stir up all of these associations in her and perhaps trauma energies, she gets swept up in it.
Right.
And she's stuck. And she understands that she's the one who's suffering.
Right.
So that's where all of these traditions and things to ponder, meditations, the kinds of things that we were reading from Pema Chödrön just on Friday, there's a lot more how-to in the Buddhist teachings under different teachers.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
there are some people that relate to Buddhism as a religion, and others that relate to it as a philosophy or just a way of life without the religious rigidity. And so, as with all of these things, I just advocate for people, please search around until you find something that resonates with you. Right?
Right.
Don't hook into it just because it has the name Buddhism or somebody else likes it.
Oh, right. Well, I'd love to backtrack just for a second. I missed that. I can listen to it in the archive, I guess.
You missed what?
I missed the Pema Chödrön one, and it sounds as if it was right along the lines that I was thinking of. We were away last week with family, and it was hard to tune in all the time. We're back home now. But one thing you said last week that helped me reduce my own suffering, if you want to call it that. That's a grand word for just not being quite happy with something, is that you said this is just part of life. If you go to your guru's family, you'll find out that they're suffering. The guru isn't totally enlightened all the time either. And that it's like having permission to not feel so good. And that alleviates some level of pain. I have permission to not feel so happy about this. And then maybe it's easier to allow something. However others responded to what you read, that's how I did. And I loved that you said that even the best of them have their moments or long periods when they're not in such great shape. And that seemed like giving permission and forgiveness for it, too. So, but then to really allow and really accept, well, anyway, the Eightfold Path I thought I wanted to understand all of them.
Yeah, well, I think that's overly ambitious right now.
Yeah, maybe.
And it's just going to derail you.
Okay. Well, it's just a matter of translating, too. Those words were not words that I use much. That list that Nhat Hanh gave at the end of that list seemed foreign in some ways. So you're saying just...
Well, here's where I would point you. There's a 1994 book by Pema Chödrön titled Start Where You Are.
Okay.
And there's a lot of good instruction, detailed explanation of what are these words that they use in the Buddhist teaching. Like basic sitting meditation called Shamatha Vipassana meditation, or the practice of taking things in and sending them out. It's called Tonglen, Tonglen, or the practice of working with slogans called the 7 Points of Mind Training, or called Lojong, Lojong. So as she goes through the book, she talks about each of these.
Mm.
And so there are these, 7 points of mind training. There are these slogans. It's a lot like what Thich Nhat Hanh had in the book that we were reading of his, where he's starting to explain some of the point-for-point teachings. And so the Buddha laid out these 4 noble truths, and then the Buddha and others after him developed what you might call the Lojong practice, Lojong. It's mind training. It has 2 elements, the practice, which is the Tonglen meditation, and the teaching, which comes in the form of slogans.
Mm-hmm.
And so, drive all blame into one is one of the slogans. And so it doesn't mean pick one person to go and blame. It means take 100% responsibility for everything you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And so drive all blame into one means me. I'm the one.
Yeah.
So basically, instead of blame, it teaches me to dismantle blame and substitute active work at growing in responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that helps a little. It's pointing
It
you in
does.
that direction.
It does. It leads me to a question. This is a very practical question. I've been telling you about my son and how he left his medical practice and fixed up this sailboat and got it working with many obstacles. They are down in the Bahamas. They've, in some sense, arrived. They've arrived at the place they wanted to spend some time. His wife is going to go down with one of their sons for a few days. And yet he wrote to me a couple of days ago and said, guess what? I'm still depressed at times, and I had a terrible day yesterday. I think he expected that he would sail away
Yes.
from all of his
Yeah,
troubles.
the geographic cure in a sense. Yes.
Right. He did it. And so thank God for the radio show, because I was able to say, well, now you're seeing that you had to step away from the exterior stress of the job you had. And it was making you sick. But you've done everything now, and you've been amazingly enterprising, and you've set up this boat, and you've got a tremendous brain for knowing how to repair things that go wrong. And here you are. You're discovering that your feelings have found you down there, and you're not in total bliss. And I said, join the club. I said, now the work begins, but you're doing the right thing. You're going on your dream trip, and now you can see where you really need to go. And I haven't had a chance to talk to him, because one of the things that happened was his dinghy. He was doing something out in the ocean. His dinghy capsized because the boat went by with huge waves, capsized him. He lost a lot of equipment. He lost his backpack. He lost his iPhone, and he had to swim around. And because the dinghy was upside down, a sailor came by and helped him, and then he got a scuba diver, and he scuba dove himself to find his equipment, never found it. I mean, he had some reasons to be upset, but he said, no, this is the old bad stuff. I didn't like what happened, but it was more than that. There's something going on, and I'm just not altogether well. Big surprise. I knew this was going to happen, Dr. Tim, but I was just waiting to see when he would write about it, because I figured he's got to face some things. And so I wanted to offer him some tools. The wake-up sheet hasn't been a tool that he wants to use for some reason. So anyway, at least Mother can feed him diluted tools by just talking to him. But
well, and even better than that, the lived example of using them and feeling the benefits.
mm-hmm.
I mean, his experience of interacting with you has to be significantly different over these past, what did you say it was, 2017?
Yeah,
So
almost 8 years.
8 years
Yeah.
of you really listening to and applying a lot of the tools has changed your life.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing, right?
Mm.
Rather than getting caught up thinking, what can I say? What can I do? How can I give him a tool? How can I change him?
Yeah, that's
Keep
always.
the focus on yourself
Yeah.
and stay as calm and loving and centered as you can, and then extend that calm, loving, centered energy in his direction.
You always do that, Dr. Tim, and it's good. I cast my line out, and I've got to reel in and just stay in myself. That is very good. By the way, a little feedback. There's sometimes a clanking going on, which I think is coming from you, and you may hear it and think it's coming from me. I'm not doing anything. And you also have that lisp again. You're perfectly clear, but it doesn't sound like Dr. Tim.
Yeah, it's interesting. I began this recording trying a different microphone, but when I have that microphone on, and it's a lapel mic, it does not allow me to hear you as a caller. So I unplugged that, and now I'm on speakerphone.
I see.
And with a speakerphone on, it's an omnidirectional thing. It picks up all kinds of background noise. If my chair squeaks when I move, etc.
Oh, okay. So it is, it's you then, because I remember you have said sometimes that I'm not doing anything, and yet there's this noise.
Well, Friday's show was just full of that. Friday's show was full of all kinds of noise that I did not hear at the time. I was using the Bluetooth earpiece, and I heard nothing. And when I went back and listened to the recording, it was just so distracting. There were so many noises and sounds. So we're working on it. We're trying to find a good solution.
Yeah, well, it must be mind-boggling for Allende, one thing after another. And he's got a lot of artists and talkers and stuff on his app. It's not just us.
Well, hopefully it's something whose solution is close at hand.
I hope so, yeah.
So did we answer enough of the question about what you were reading there about the Buddhist teachings?
Yes, I would love to get that Pema Chödrön book. I had never heard of that one, so that's great.
Well, one of the things that really endears me to her particular style and approach is that she talks a lot about being gentle. Being gentle with yourself and awakening bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, she says, has three qualities. It is soft and gentle, which is compassion. At the same time, bodhicitta is clear and sharp, which is called prajna. And it is open, wide open. And that last quality is also called shunyata, or emptiness. Now, it sounds cold, but in bodhicitta, it isn't cold at all.
Doesn't sound cold, yeah.
There's a heart quality. There's a warmth of compassion that pervades the space and the clarity. And so this is just, part of a paragraph I'm reading to you from her book, Start Where You Are. And her emphasis on going slow and talking gently to yourself and looking for the deep softness within you and finding it with tenderness and kindness. So that's one of the main reasons. And she says the first slogan of the 7 points of mind training is, first, train in the preliminaries. The preliminaries are the basic meditation practice. It's beneficial, supportive, warm-hearted, brilliant. And when we say first train in the preliminaries, it's not as if we first do this deep meditative practice and then we graduate into something more advanced. It's that we do this meditative practice and we just get better and better at it, and we gently work with ourselves as we are able to understand what it means when they say consciousness, action, thought, etc. Those 8 words that you had,
Yeah.
Eightfold Path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were a little different, and maybe hers will be somehow in the same ballpark as the language I speak to myself. Right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood. I like the right livelihood one, but right view, I mean, I need somebody to interpret those words, and it sounds as if she does that, so that's great.
Well, she says here in one paragraph, she says, next, there are 5 slogans that emphasize the openness of bodhicitta, the absolute quality of bodhicitta. This is this warm, soft, loving center in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
She says, these point to the fact that although we are usually very caught up in the solidness and seriousness of life, we could begin to stop making such a big deal and connect with the spacious and joyful aspect of our being. So this is an invitation, no matter what's going on, to remember your true nature, to return to your core. And your core is this connection to your source. Your core is this ability to approach everyone and everything as part of yourself with this wide open compassion.
Allowing, that word allowing, and Matt Kahn saying love what is, and I'm saying instead allow what is, because allow is a less urgent word somehow. It's more peaceful, open.
Yeah, if that works for you, then substitute that word. That's like what I said earlier. If you go looking for a Buddhist teaching or teacher and it doesn't resonate with you, let it go and find another Buddhist teacher.
Yeah.
Because every teacher has his or her own flavor.
Yeah.
You know, we've listened on in the support groups to various teachers. Ganga Ji is one. She's a very soft-spoken woman, has a very gentle energy, and we actually started listening to more of her stuff because one of our group members was complaining that, well, we're always listening to these men. Aren't there any women teaching this? So we brought in Ganga Ji, and several people didn't like it because she's, too airy-fairy and, Pollyannish or whatever. Their take on it,
right,
as they interpret what she's saying, is that she's not grounded in reality. Well, she's very much grounded in reality. She's just going at it in her way with her style.
Right.
And if it doesn't resonate for those people, I just say, okay, go keep working and find somebody else.
Good advice. Yeah, when there are many recordings on podcasts or whatever it is that you can, for meditations, and I'm really picky about the person who's leading the meditation. Some just I don't like them. So it's not very nice, but I go find one.
Yeah, but that's fine. That's why there's so many. And pick what resonates with you and it's going to work for you, because that's what's important. You can't do it for somebody else. Like we're just trying to talk about your son. You can't make him use the tools that work for you. You can't make the tools that work for you work for him, etc. But you can be very selective about and very focused on doing what works for you. You can have that high priority of your choice of what you're going to focus your mind energy on, so that you keep yourself focused in that calm, loving, compassionate, joyful space.
That leads me to another question about meditation. I have read that there are certain sounds that if you listen to them, they help your brain sort of reorganize itself. I think it's gamma vibration or hertz, or I don't know the words. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that use different sound frequencies to assist in creating an atmosphere, and others that are doing research on what that tonal vibration might shift in your own brain frequency away from the alpha or beta and into the gamma brainwave frequency. And I think John Donovan or Jim Donovan is somebody who works with sound healing, and he's got a meditation. Somebody just sent me a 12-minute, but it's not really a meditation as much as it's a chanting, it's a toning. It's like Dale Allen Hoffman talking about in his book, The Echoes of an Ancient Dream, where toning is an ancient practice that helps change the vibratory frequency that we're experiencing in this thing we call a body, which is just an energy system, and can assist us in what you might call reaching a meditative state, or reaching a deeper state, or reaching a more wide open, aware state.
I guess I figure, and most of us probably figure, we need all the help we can get. And I thought, if I have these hearing aids, anything I play on my iPhone goes right into my hearing aids, like having earphones. And the sound is fantastic. Listening to music, it's like being in the concert hall. You get the sense of the shape of the hall. You can tell if it's a little room or a big room, or one of those soundproofed rooms where the sound is dead and there aren't any overtones. You can hear the difference. You can tell you're listening in a symphony hall and it's just going into your ears. It's amazing. It must do things to the brain.
Well, it can, and some of the devices that you might tap into, or the recordings that you might tap into, might be specifically designed to maximize that. I know that, I've done interviews with a gentleman who's got a 30-year history, probably now closer to 40-year history with his family, of doing research on brain waves and sounds and frequencies, and all with the idea of assisting people to reach a more calm, loving state, whether you want to call it meditation or not, to be more focused when they want to be focused, to be more relaxed when they want to be relaxed, etc. There are people who, the gentleman that did brain spotting, he created a bunch of files that you can get on YouTube of this alternating left-right, moving back and forth from one side of the brain to the other. And so first he learned to do EMDR, and then he created a softer, gentler, slower version of EMDR. And then he stumbled across this thing he calls brain spotting. And his name is David Grand, Grand. And if you go to YouTube and type in David Grand, you can probably tap into some of his files that he's uploaded that have been specifically constructed to try and benefit the brain through this alternating left-right stimulation. And so you might want to use that. Yeah, it's called David Grand Bilateral Music.
Wow.
And when I was doing the interviews with him, he talked about going into the studio with these techno geeks and constructing these, you might call them songs, but audio files.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one that's 6 minutes and one that's 11 minutes and one that's 18 minutes. But if you just go on YouTube and search for David Grand biolateral, he calls it, Biolateral music.
Wow.
And you could have that playing in the background while you're trying to do whatever meditative practice seems to resonate with you.
Well, meditation's never been a strong point with me. Doing wake-up sheets, doing mind shifters feels very possible. Hard work maybe, but possible. But just sitting quietly and doing breathing, counting, and I don't last very long.
Okay, but you can do that while you're walking.
Yeah.
You can have this music going on, and you can be walking and looking at the horizon and counting your breaths and just allowing whatever thoughts to come in and out, just to be wide open, fully aware of everything that's happening, leaving the judgments aside, leaving the labeling aside. That's the kind of thing that Thich Nhat Hanh made famous with his walking meditation.
Oh, okay. What was the name of it again, David Grand, and what was the what do you call it?
Biolateral, Lateral.
Okay.
Biolateral music.
Okay, thanks.
With David Grand. If you type that into YouTube, you'll come up with several files.
Thanks. And the Pema Chödrön book was called?
Start Where You Are.
Okay, thanks. Finally getting a pencil and writing this stuff down. Thank you, Dr. Kim.
And there are all kinds of people that are tapping into the benefit of this alternating left-right stimulation. I just saw another one recently, the holistic psychologist who posts a lot on Instagram. And she's very solid, very good work that she does with helping people who were raised in less than ideal homes identify the patterns that they've adopted to try and cope with those less than ideal situations and then correct them as an adult. And so she takes her hands that they would be facing, the palms facing her chest, and has her thumbs pointing up and touching each other. And so now her hands are on either side of her chest, and she just taps back and forth, like the butterfly tap, which is just a slight modification to the idea of giving yourself a hug at the shoulders and then doing the butterfly tap. But she had a couple of posts on Instagram under the, her heading is the holistic psychologist, HOLIST, etc. And that's another thing. We've talked here before, and you can find this on YouTube. It's called Cook's Hookup or Cook's Cross. And there's a 1 or 2 minute video on that where you wrap your wrists around each other and then pull them towards you and sit and cross your legs and breathe and soften. And it's a nice energy shifter, right? It's the idea of using like Donna Eden's work and energy work. And acknowledging that, it's like what Dr. Michael Ryce likes to talk about, the body as an antenna.
Right.
And so if you go to YouTube and look for Cook's Hookup, COOK''S, Hookup, HOOKUP, then you've got a whole series of videos you can watch from a minute to 4 minutes, where they show you how to do this. Cross your arms, lace your fingers, pull it towards you, cross your legs, breathe and soften. And again, it's like aligning your body's energy system like you would an antenna, and can help people release some energy, get some trauma energy moving, softened, and releasing, especially if you combine it with something like Dr. Michael Ryce's goal canceling and relaxing breath work.
Dr. Tim, you mentioned holistic psychology, and there was a woman's name connected with that, I thought.
Yeah, it's if you look at if you look for the holistic psychologist.
Okay.
I'm trying to type it in here as we talk. I don't type as well as I can. Psychology.
You're juggling a lot of things.
But if you just type that into your search engine, you come up with the holistic psychologist, and her name is Dr. Nicole LaPera, LePera. So she has her own website, The Holistic Psychologist, and she posts a lot of things on Instagram. So you can get a lot of her wisdom in snippets.
That's fun. Yeah.
And again, the whole point of it is just so that you can restore yourself to a more calm, open, loving space, because any decisions that you have to make that come from that kind of a space will probably result in things that you prefer.
Oh, yeah.
Over the decisions you make when you're coming from anger and hatred and frustration and sadness and worry. So, this is like the Buddhist thing of, start where you are and starting at the beginning and starting with the fundamental practices, because that kind of clears the space.
Yeah.
And you might think of it in terms of that brings your resources online and makes them more available to you when you're in that calm, loving, centered space. Whereas when you're in anger, when you're triggered, when you're in upset, when you're in fear, you might have lived a lot, you might have learned a lot of things, but they're not going to be accessible to you when your emotional intensity is high.
Right.
It's almost like they've been, cut off from you and you've been isolated from them. The other thing about the Buddhist teaching is that it's trying to help us understand that when you're feeling wounded, when you're feeling sad, scared, upset, angry, hurt, you're not alone. This is a part of our taking on the physical experience.
Yeah.
And it isn't that, it's a bad thing to be feeling those things. It is, however, probably better to know how to use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
To use those energies, use those physical sensations, use those feelings of suffering as an alarm system to help me direct my attention inside rather than what my culture teaches me, which is when I have those negative emotional experiences, I want to scan the environment to figure out who I should attack or run away from or bribe or seduce to get them to change so that I don't have to feel what's going on inside of me.
That reminds me to ask you, did you ever hear from Christian Sundberg? Speaking of walking in the physical.
I thought of it over the weekend and thought about sending him another email,
Yeah.
but I haven't heard back.
I would so love to find out what his experience has been since he wrote that book and where he's at now. Yeah. I could look him up too. I mean, not to harass him, but just see if there's anything new come out under his name. I haven't even looked.
Well, I will send another email and we'll see what we can see. It's for me, it's always interesting which ones respond right away and which ones lay dormant for a week or 2 or 5, and then all of a sudden they respond, and which ones I never hear from. So
yeah.
I'm actively searching that kind of thing out. I have 3 pre-interview calls this week for people, hopefully for the On Your Mind podcast, hosted by Journey Stream. There's a little bit going on in the background where people are trying to create more awareness about that body of work because they feel there's so much value in it. And it's like everything else, it's a work in progress.
Right. Did you ever hear from Joanne Cohen Katz? Do you remember who that is?
Yes, I did not hear back.
Yeah, weird. I'm going to get after her. This would really be a wonderful connection.
Well, I'm making a note here to email both Christian and her again. And of course, that's, the other thing is, did I type the address the right way, right? Did I?
Right.
Something glitched technologically, so she never got the email? We never know until after it's all sorted out.
Right, that's true. Well, thanks for spending time on this, Dr. Tim.
Oh, thanks for calling. It's always easier to have a show where there's some issue to address and discuss. And as we say over and over again, that's much more likely to end up a highlight show than when I'm just sitting here reading something or doing a monologue. So.
Well, I like the word conversation, you say, and then we'll have a conversation. And that's a lovely idea, invitation.
That's the point. Well, anything else today before we wrap this up?
No, thanks.
Well, thank you. It's always a blessing when you call and you and anybody else calls. So I will hang up the phone here with you and get ready to close out the show. So we've got a few minutes. Blessings, Susan. Thank you for that call. And I'm looking at the comments. They say various things about the sound fading in and out, but thank you for listening. If you've been here the entire time, I want to remind you that when I end this show, the Needle app shuts down. Michael and Jeannie will open it up again from their location, and you should get a notification. I have every reason to believe they'll be on live again today. And I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Thanks for listening.